Don't compare yourself to other people, because if you continue to do that, you'll become like someone else. And at the end of the day, what we need is individuals. If everyone compares themselves to the next person, then everyone's going to sound the same.
Avi Kaplan had everything: fame, success, millions of fans screaming his name. Then one day in 2017, he just walked away from Pentatonix.
I have an announcement to make. This decision is something that I've been struggling with a lot. It's been one of the toughest decisions to make in my entire life. I've decided to take a step back from Pentatonix.
No warning, no drama, just ditched them. He disappeared into the woods of Tennessee and never looked back. The group kept going without him like nothing happened. But Avi was done. He stopped posting, stopped explaining, stopped living the life everyone thought he wanted. But why would someone leave at the peak of their career? What was he running from? Join us as we uncover the shocking truth behind Avi's sudden departure. Fame came fast and hit hard. Pentatonix did not climb the ladder slowly. They exploded into the spotlight almost overnight. What started as 5 college students singing together turned into one of the biggest musical acts in the world. Their voices blended in ways most people had never heard before. No instruments, no backup band, just 5 people creating entire songs with nothing but their mouths. And at the center of it all was Avi Kaplan, the deep-voiced bass singer whose rumbling notes became the foundation of every track. Avi's voice was not just low, it was powerful enough to shake a room. When he opened his mouth, those bottom notes rolled out like thunder. Fans could feel it in their chests. Other members handled the melody and harmonies, but Avi anchored everything. Without him, the sound felt incomplete. He became known for those incredible bass lines that made Pentatonix stand out from every other vocal group trying to make it big. Success arrived fast, and it came with demands nobody warned them about. Recording sessions stretched into early mornings. Tour buses became temporary homes, hotel rooms in different cities every single night. Press interviews before breakfast, photo shoots between rehearsals, meet and greets with hundreds of fans after exhausting performances. The schedule never stopped. There was always another city, another stage, another commitment that could not be canceled. The group released album after album. Each one climbed the charts. Their YouTube channel brought in millions of views. Award shows invited them to perform. Television networks wanted them on talk shows. Radio stations played their covers on repeat. Pentatonix became a household name faster than anyone expected. What seemed like a dream come true on the outside started feeling like a machine that would not slow down. Avi threw himself into the work completely. He showed up for every rehearsal, every recording session, every promotional event. He smiled for cameras and signed autographs and gave fans the moments they wanted. But behind the scenes, the constant motion began wearing him down. The pressure to maintain that level of success never eased up. One hit song meant they needed another. One successful tour meant planning an even bigger one. The industry does not reward rest. It rewards more. The faster Pentatonix rose, the less control any of them had over their own time. Managers scheduled their days down to the minute. Record labels expected new content constantly. Fans wanted them everywhere at once. Social media never slept, and neither did the expectations. Avi found himself living a life that belonged more to the brand than to him. Every choice had to consider what was good for the group, what would keep the momentum going, what would satisfy everyone except the person stuck in the middle of it all. What started as 5 friends making music for the love of it transformed into a business empire. And Avi Kaplan, the guy who just wanted to sing, found himself trapped inside a version of success that looked nothing like what he imagined. The world saw fame and fortune, but Avi felt something else entirely creeping in, something that would eventually force him to make the hardest decision of his career. But the real problem was not just the fame itself. It was what that fame demanded him to give up every single day. A life that no longer fit. The constant travel became the hardest part for Avi, harder than the performances themselves, harder than the recording sessions that lasted until dawn. Pentatonix toured relentlessly, moving from city to city without pause, and Avi spent more nights on a tour bus than in his own bed. The lifestyle that looked glamorous from the outside felt suffocating when you were living it every single day. Avi missed home in ways that cut deep. He missed sitting down for dinner with his family, missed the familiar faces of friends he barely saw anymore, missed having conversations that did not revolve around the next show or the next album. Every phone call back home reminded him of what he was sacrificing. Birthdays he could not attend, holidays spent in hotel rooms, important moments happening without him there to witness them. The people he loved most became voices on a screen instead of people he could hug. Long stretches away from everyone who mattered wore him down mentally and emotionally. Weeks turned into months of living out of suitcases, eating meals in cities he barely remembered the names of, waking up disoriented because every hotel room looked the same. There was no routine, no stability, no sense of being grounded anywhere. Home stopped feeling like a place and became more like a memory of something he used to have. The schedule left no room for solitude, and Avi desperately needed time alone to recharge. Between sound checks and performances and travel, he was always surrounded by people, always expected to be present and engaged, always on display. Even quiet moments on the bus were not truly private. Bandmates and crew members were always nearby, always needing something, always pulling his attention in different directions. The introvert in him was drowning. Avi started feeling like he was living someone else's life, like he had stepped into a role that did not match who he actually was as a person. The version of himself that fans saw on stage felt increasingly disconnected from the guy who just wanted to sit quietly in nature and breathe. He was performing constantly, not just musically but emotionally, pretending he was fine when exhaustion crept into his bones, smiling when he felt empty inside, pushing through when every part of him wanted to stop. The lifestyle demanded a specific type of person, someone who thrived on constant stimulation and endless activity, someone energized by crowds and chaos. Avi was not that person. He never had been. He realized too late that the dream he had chased was built for someone with a completely different personality. Success in Pentatonix required sacrificing the parts of himself that made him feel whole, and he was running out of pieces to give. Every day felt like trying to fit into clothes that were the wrong size, uncomfortable and restricting and never quite right. The life Pentatonix offered was incredible for someone, just not for him. And that truth was becoming impossible to ignore. But what made it even worse was how the constant pressure clashed with the one thing that always helped him cope, the very thing he could no longer access. Nature versus the spotlight. Avi had always found peace in nature. It was where he went when the world felt too heavy, where his mind could finally settle. Trees, mountains, open skies, quiet trails, where the only sounds were birds and wind. These places restored something in him that nothing else could. Nature did not demand anything from him. It just existed, calm and steady and real. But the Pentatonix lifestyle left no space for those moments of escape. City life became his prison, concrete and crowds and noise everywhere he turned. The group spent most of their time in major cities for performances, press events, recording sessions, all the places where nature felt like a distant fantasy. Avi craved wide-open spaces and got cramped dressing rooms instead. He longed for silence and got screaming fans and blaring speakers. He needed stillness and lived in constant motion. Every day in the city drained him a little more. Touring meant moving through urban landscapes endlessly. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Atlanta, one massive city after another with no breaks in between. Even when shows happened in smaller towns, the schedule was so tight there was no time to wander off and find a quiet spot outdoors. The tour bus went straight from the venue to the hotel to the next venue, over and over in a cycle that never allowed him to step away and breathe real air. The emotional exhaustion was relentless. Being on all the time took everything out of him. Fans expected energy and enthusiasm at every interaction. Interviewers wanted clever answers and big smiles. Bandmates needed him fully present during rehearsals and performances. There was no off switch, no moment where he could drop the mask and just exist without performing some version of himself. The constant pressure to be available, engaging, and upbeat became unbearable. Avi's personality clashed violently with everything fame required. He was naturally introverted and reflective, someone who recharged alone rather than in crowds. The spotlight demanded the opposite. It wanted him extroverted and constantly available, always accessible to thousands of people who felt entitled to his time and attention. Every autograph session, every meet and greet, every public appearance pulled him further away from the person he actually was. He started realizing the Pentatonix lifestyle was not just difficult, it was completely unsustainable for someone wired the way he was. Other members seemed to handle it better. They thrived on the energy of performances and did not seem as drained by constant interaction. But Avi felt himself disappearing under the weight of it all, losing touch with the core of who he was beneath the bass singer everyone recognized. Nature was not just a hobby or a preference for Avi, it was essential to his mental health and emotional survival. Being cut off from it while living in a whirlwind of cities and stages and obligations felt like slowly suffocating. He needed forests and rivers and mountains the way other people needed food and water, and the life he was living offered none of that. The breaking point was coming closer, and when it finally arrived, Avi knew exactly what he had to do, even though saying it out loud would break his heart. The emotional exit in 2017. The decision to leave Pentatonix was the hardest choice Avi Kaplan ever made. But by 2017, it was the only choice left. He had spent months wrestling with the reality that staying would destroy him, yet leaving meant walking away from the group that had defined his entire adult life. When he finally made up his mind, he knew he had to tell the fans directly. They deserved to hear it from him. Avi recorded a Facebook video that would change everything, sitting alone in front of a camera, looking tired but honest. His voice cracked with emotion as he explained why he could no longer continue with the group. He talked about the toll the lifestyle had taken on him, how the constant touring and pressure had worn him down mentally and physically, how he needed to step away before there was nothing left of himself to save. Every word felt heavy because he meant every single one. He made it clear this was not about the other members, not about creative differences or personal conflicts. This was about him not being able to survive in that world anymore. Avi did not want to hold the group back. he saw how much momentum Pentatonix still had, how many more years they could keep going strong. He felt like the weak link, the one who could not keep up, and he refused to be the reason they slowed down or stopped. His leaving was an act of love for them as much as it was survival for himself. The gratitude he expressed toward the fans was genuine and overwhelming. He thanked them for years of support, for singing along at shows, for making Pentatonix what it became. He acknowledged that none of it would have been possible without the people who bought albums and filled arenas and shared their music with the world. His voice filled with emotion as he tried to find words big enough to express what their loyalty had meant to him. His final performance with Pentatonix carried a weight that everyone in the room could feel. Fans knew this was the last time they would see him on stage with the group, the last time they would hear that deep bass voice blending with the others. Avi gave everything he had left in that final show, pouring years of gratitude and goodbye into every note. When it ended, he walked off stage knowing that chapter of his life was officially closed. After the performance, Avi posted one last farewell message online, shorter this time, but no less heartfelt. He told fans he would carry the memories forever, that Pentatonix would always be part of who he was, even if he could no longer be part of what they were becoming. He wished the group continued success and asked fans to keep supporting them the way they always had. Then he stepped back from the spotlight, ready to figure out who Avi Kaplan was outside of Pentatonix. The group did not fall apart without him. In fact, they moved forward faster than anyone expected, barely pausing to acknowledge the massive hole he left behind. Pentatonix moves on without looking back. Avi's final show with Pentatonix marked the end of an era, but for the group itself, it was barely a pause in their momentum. The remaining 4 members had decisions to make quickly. They could not afford to slow down or take time to grieve the loss publicly. The music industry does not wait for anyone to catch their breath, and Pentatonix had commitments that could not be canceled, tours already booked, albums already planned, fans expecting them to keep delivering. Finding a replacement happened faster than most people expected. The group needed a bass singer who could fill the massive void Avi left behind, and they found Matt Sallee. Matt was talented, experienced, and crucially, he was ready to jump into the chaos immediately. He did not get months to ease into the role. He got weeks to learn the songs, memorize the arrangements, and prepare to stand where Avi had stood for years. The pressure on him was enormous, but Pentatonix could not afford to wait. Matt stepped into the group seamlessly, at least from the outside looking in. He had a strong bass voice that anchored the harmonies. He learned the choreography and stage presence required for their performances. He smiled for cameras and engaged with fans like he had always been there. To casual observers, the transition looked smooth, like Pentatonix had simply swapped one piece for another without missing a beat. The machine kept running. The group maintained their brutal schedule without adjustments. Tours continued as planned. Recording sessions stayed on track. Promotional appearances filled their calendars just as densely as before. If anything, Pentatonix seemed determined to prove they did not need Avi to succeed, that they were bigger than any single member, that the brand was strong enough to survive lineup changes. The message was clear. The show goes on. Commercially, Pentatonix did not just survive Avi's departure. They thrived. Album sales stayed strong. Their YouTube channel kept growing. Awards and nominations kept coming. Fans who worried the group might fall apart were proven wrong. The remaining members, plus Matt, delivered the same high-energy performances and polished recordings audiences expected. The formula still worked. The harmonies still blended. The success kept building. But the speed at which they moved forward raised questions some fans could not ignore. Was there any mourning period? Any acknowledgement of what losing Avi really meant? The group posted brief thank yous and well wishes when he left, then immediately pivoted to introducing Matt and promoting upcoming projects. It felt businesslike, efficient, professional in a way that left little room for emotion. Pentatonix was a brand now, and brands do not stop for sentiment. Avi's absence was noticeable to longtime fans who knew his voice intimately, but the group made it easy to forget by filling every space he left with new content and constant activity. They did not dwell on the past. They did not revisit what made the original lineup special. They simply pushed forward with relentless energy. The message was unmistakable. Pentatonix was moving on, with or without anyone who could not keep up. Meanwhile, Avi was finally free to explore the music he had always dreamed of making. The music Pentatonix would never have allowed him to create. The music he always wanted to make. Avi did not waste time after leaving Pentatonix. He released solo music the same year he walked away from the group. The speed surprised some people, but it made perfect sense for someone who had been creatively restrained for years. He finally had the freedom to make the music that lived inside him, the songs he could never record while locked into Pentatonix's pop, focused, a cappella sound. This was his chance to strip away everything that did not feel authentic and start over. The shift in his music was immediate and undeniable. Gone were the polished pop covers and radio-friendly arrangements that defined Pentatonix. Avi dove headfirst into folk music, the genre that had always spoken to him on a deeper level, the sound that felt like home. Acoustic guitars replaced vocal bass lines. Organic instrumentation replaced digital production. Raw emotion replaced commercial appeal. The difference was not subtle, it was a complete transformation. Avi was returning to his roots, the musical foundation he had before Pentatonix ever existed. Before the fame and the tours and the pressure, he had loved folk music for its simplicity and honesty, for the way it did not need theatrics or gimmicks to connect with people. Folk music was about storytelling and emotion, about sitting with a guitar and letting the song speak for itself. That was the artist Avi had always wanted to be, and now he finally could. In a 2020 interview with Billboard, Avi confirmed what fans had already figured out. Leaving Pentatonix was as much about creative freedom as it was about lifestyle. He talked openly about feeling restricted within the group, about having musical ideas that did not fit their brand, about wanting to explore sounds and styles that would never work in an a cappella setting. Pentatonix had a formula that worked commercially, and straying from it was not an option. Avi needed out to be himself artistically. The solo work he released reflected everything he could not do before. Songs filled with natural instrumentation, lyrics that came from personal experience rather than covering someone else's hit, melodies that wandered and breathed instead of adhering to tight vocal arrangements. He experimented with different sounds, blended folk with elements of blues and Americana, created music that felt lived in rather than manufactured. Every song sounded like freedom. Critics and longtime fans noticed the authenticity immediately. This was not Avi trying to capitalize on Pentatonix fame by doing more of the same. This was an artist rediscovering who he was before the machine swallowed him. The music was quieter, more introspective, less concerned with chart performance, and more focused on emotional truth. Some Pentatonix fans struggled with the change. They wanted the bass drops and flashy vocals, but Avi was not making music for them anymore. He was making it for himself. The creative reason for leaving was just as important as the lifestyle reason, maybe more so. Avi could have survived the touring if the music fed his soul, but singing songs that did not reflect his artistic vision while being unable to explore what truly moved him, that was unsustainable. But creative freedom alone was not enough. Avi also needed to completely rebuild where and how he lived, trading everything fame offered for something money could not buy. Trading fame for freedom. Avi used the fame Pentatonix gave him strategically. He had built name recognition that most independent artists could only dream of, and he leveraged it to launch a solo career on his own terms. Fans who followed him from the group gave his solo work an immediate audience. Radio stations and music blogs paid attention because his name already meant something. Venues booked him because they knew people would show up. The fame he once felt trapped by became the foundation for his escape. He released music consistently in the years following his departure. 3 EPs came first, each one exploring different facets of the folk sound he loved. The projects were smaller and more intimate than anything Pentatonix ever produced, recorded in studios that prioritized warmth over polish, released without the massive marketing machines that push pop albums. Avi was building a new career brick by brick, proving he could exist outside the group that made him famous. Floating on a Dream arrived as his first full-length solo album, a collection of songs that captured everything he had been working toward. The album felt cohesive and personal, each track revealing layers of who Avi was when the spotlight dimmed and the crowds went home. Critics praised it for its honesty and craftsmanship. Fans appreciated the vulnerability woven through every lyric. It was not a commercial blockbuster, but it did not need to be. Success looked different now. He followed it with Feel All Right, an album that leaned even further into the rootsy, organic sound he loved. The music felt looser, more relaxed, like Avi had stopped worrying about what anyone expected and started trusting his instincts completely. Sales and streaming numbers were modest compared to Pentatonix, but that was never the point. Avi was making music that felt true, and the people who connected with it were the right audience. But the biggest change was not musical, it was geographical. Avi left California entirely and moved to a quiet forest area in Tennessee. The decision shocked some fans who assumed he would stay close to the music industry hubs, but Avi was done living in cities. He found property surrounded by trees, far from paparazzi and traffic, and the constant hum of urban noise. The move was deliberate and symbolic. He was choosing peace over proximity to fame. Tennessee gave him everything California could not: space to breathe, silence when he needed it, nature in every direction. He could wake up and walk into the woods, could write songs on a porch surrounded by birdsong instead of sirens, could live without being recognized every time he stepped outside. The forest became his sanctuary, the place where he finally felt like himself again after years of pretending. The contrast was stark. Pentatonix members were still living the Los Angeles lifestyle, attending industry events and staying plugged into the celebrity world, while Avi was chopping wood and watching deer from his window. He had traded red carpets for hiking trails, award shows for sunsets through the trees, fame for freedom, and he never looked back. But walking away from the spotlight came with consequences, and Avi's personal life became fodder for rumors he never asked for. Privacy, rumors, and the life he chose. Avi became noticeably more private after leaving Pentatonix. The guy who once shared his life with millions of fans through social media and interviews pulled back dramatically. He stopped posting constantly, stopped explaining his every move, stopped feeling obligated to keep the public updated on his personal business. The shift was intentional. He had spent years living under a microscope and discovered he hated it. Privacy was not just a preference anymore, it was a necessity for his mental health. The less he shared, the more people speculated, and that created its own problems. Fans and gossip sites started filling in the blanks with their own theories, making up stories when real information was not available. Avi's quiet life in the Tennessee woods became mysterious to people who thought they deserved access to every detail. But he refused to play that game anymore. His life belonged to him now, not to an audience that felt entitled to know everything. One brief relationship became public in 2017 when Avi dated Trisha Paytas, the controversial YouTuber and media personality. The pairing surprised many people. They seemed like an odd match on the surface. Her life was loud and public and dramatic, while his was increasingly quiet and withdrawn. The relationship did not last long, and when it ended, both moved on without much public commentary. But it gave people a glimpse into Avi's personal life during a transitional period. Marriage rumors exploded later when photos surfaced online showing what looked like Avi in wedding attire. Fans jumped to conclusions immediately, assuming he had gotten married in secret and hidden it from everyone. Gossip spread fast across social media. People dissected the photos looking for clues, tried to figure out who the bride was, created entire narratives about a secret wedding. The speculation grew wild because Avi refused to address it publicly. The truth was far less dramatic than the rumors suggested. The wedding photos were real, but Avi was not the groom. He had been attending his sister's wedding, dressed up and celebrating her big day like any supportive brother would. The photos showed him in formal wear because he was part of the wedding party, not because he was getting married himself. But people saw what they wanted to see and ran with it. When the real story finally came out, some fans felt embarrassed for jumping to conclusions. Others felt annoyed that Avi had not just clarified things immediately. But that was the point. He did not owe anyone an explanation about his personal life anymore. He was not a Pentatonix member living under contractual obligations to maintain a public image. He was a private citizen who happened to make music. The distinction mattered to him, even if fans struggled to accept it. Avi had chosen a life that prioritized peace, nature, and authenticity over the trappings of stardom. He walked away from sold-out arenas and chose quiet forest mornings instead. He traded fame for the freedom to be nobody special when he wanted to be. The life he built in Tennessee was everything Pentatonix could never give him. And the wedding photo mix-up was just another reminder that the public version of his life would never match the private reality he protected fiercely. He had made his choice, and rumors could not touch what mattered most. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.